everyone. I have been looking forward to this discussion. Well, I first thought I'm really excited to talk to you about music, and then immediately remembered how hard it is to talk about music. I think of all the arts, music is the most abstract, which I think is why it's so direct. You don't need to interpret, you don't need to decipher codes or symbols, you don't have to understand a language. You're completely in the realm of interpretation. And for all three of us, we're all musicians, and we're also other things: journalists, writers, activists, educators. And against the odds, music remains an incredibly important part to all of our lives. So I want to start with a general question to both of you. What does music mean to you? We can start with you, Aïda.
Well, that's a very broad question. But I'd say that on a personal level, for me, music is, first of all, one of my ways of being on this earth. I'm a singer, but I'm also a journalist. So it's one of my ways to, deal with my presence on this earth. I'd say that also these past years, and since I've started learning music, music has been a medicine also. In difficult times, difficult situations, it's been soothing. It's been helping to go through, difficult phases, and so I see music as a pretty much as a medicine, and also as a way to gather. Music is a way to gather people together, to share. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree completely with that. And I would just add on this last point that while music is received by each one individually and can mean many different things to many different people, it's still something that is done communally, that is done in a space together. So there's this aspect of this very individual, I might feel about a piece of music in a very specific way, but it also only happens because I am listening to this piece of music with other people together that themselves might feel very different about it. So there's this kind of contrast between the individual and the collective that happens in a space where music is played, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And I've been thinking a lot about what makes a piece of music more than just sounds, or what makes an artwork more than just canvas and paintings. On the moon, a painting by Monet would just be debris, but down here on Earth, it's a lot more than that. It's the intention of an artist to create a work, but that work is completed by the receiver, that we each bring our own cargo of experience to a piece of artwork, which completes it. It's what gives it meaning. It's what means that it's not just a piece of debris down here, that it's so much more than that. But I think this illustrates just how individual the experience of hearing music really is. It is as an individual as your DNA. It's your particular character, experience, history, memory. So there's this really individual experience of hearing music, and yet at the same time, music is the artwork which is nearly always at the center of collective movements. So you have this experience of it being very individual, but then there is actually a received and collective shared understanding of what the music actually is. Now, I'm wondering if this is a contradiction or not between the individual and the collective. Can you talk to that a bit?
Well, I don't think it's a contradiction in itself. I think that it's what you said at first here was important. Also, this idea that we as individuals associate specific music also with specific things that might have happened in our life. So, if, for example, you played a piece of music to someone who was about to die, who was dying, you will associate that piece of music with that also that person that might have been close to you and that you feel a strong connection with. And so for the rest of your life, when you hear that piece of music, this is what you will be thinking. But of course, the person next to you will not have this association. So obviously, that person will hear very differently the same whatever it is, Schubert impromptu, right? And in terms of this music as a kind of, it can be this, what you said, it as a means to bring together also a movement, bring together people for a specific cause. And music in that sense can be a very central element, because it brings people together to experience something communally, and that makes it a very strong impactful tool, actually.
Because, yeah, do you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to add on that. I just wonder what would be art without sharing the art. It could be for music. We had this conversation this morning, painting or whatever form of art. But there always needs to be a giver, a receiver, and then the receiver gives back also. So it's also a full circle. Otherwise, producing music on your own, well, you obviously need to train and to work on your music, but this is an action. It's not, I would say it's not like art in its whole form.
Yeah, it's a bit like in your example with the painting. The fact that it's art, it becomes art because someone is looking at the painting. If the painting is in a cellar somewhere, not to be seen, I'm not sure that you know what I mean. And with music, it's the same. So if I play my Bach sonata in my practice room, as nice as that is, I'm not sure that qualifies as art. It really only qualifies as art if it's actually being listened to by someone else. So there needs at least two people. At least. So it's already more than just an individual action. Like you said, it's just an action. It's not art.
You're a journalist and a musician, both of which require attention. Music, unlike painting, doesn't exist in space, it exists in time. And music demands attention and memory as well. Each note is relational to the next. Your understanding of it relies on your memory of the note before, and the note before that, and the note before that. So it exists and it only makes sense in time. But it demands attention. And if you stop paying attention, you completely lose the thread. What have you learned about attention by being a musician and also a journalist?
Yeah, I think that's what I'd say. That's what music requires, a lot of attention, and this is something that I've only experienced by making music and playing music, is that, as you said, if you're not here in the moment, present in the moment where you produce the music or you learn it, then especially because you usually don't do music on your own, you're playing with other people, so everybody's relying on everybody else. If you lose 1 second of attention, then you lose the whole piece. So it requires a state of, awareness and of being present that is pretty radical, which is, I think, a luxury. And especially nowadays, where attention is being, crushed and is becoming more and more, it's a very rare asset. It's being monetized. And so as a musician, being able to practice this attention and also having the privilege of having other people's attention, because, who has the chance of having an audience? Well, we do now, but when you do music, when you play music, people come here to listen to you and they're fully with you and they want to receive. And this, I feel, is a huge privilege, especially today, where we know how much people are losing their attention abilities. Yeah.
I think just in addition, I think that losing kind of attention when you're listening to music is a little bit like, I think we've all experienced this. If you're a little tired, then you have to read a text, and then you're kind of reading, but you're not really processing what you're reading, and then the moment you're back into full kind of attention, you've skipped 2 pages and you don't know what's happening anymore. You don't understand what you're reading. It's a little bit like that when you listen to music, and then if for a few moments you just kind of drift off, you're not really paying attention. It just sounds that kind of enter. Then when you're back into attention, you might not understand what's happening anymore in terms of the musical kind of development of the piece. But we were speaking also this morning, what's different for example, with something like painting, is that I can go to a museum, the painting can be there, and I can close my eyes, right? But if you go to a concert, your ears are always open. You can't. So even if you're not paying attention, you're still being immersed in this art form. So that's a very different. It's a very different act from the point of view of the kind of spectator.
And there's also something, and we've talked already about, like giving and receiving in music. That there's the creator and then the receiver, and that's this conversation. It's a form of communication. This conversation is necessary for it to exist, and I think there's something in collective music making, which again I'm going to ask you whether it's contradictory or not in a second. But I remember playing a string quartet, and I played the cello, and our professor would say, "Okay, stop, Nadia. Now sing what the second violinist is doing." And I couldn't sing it. And he said, right, you've got actually no idea what's going on around you. And if you have no idea what's going on around you, you have no idea what contribution that you can actually make. And that it was a real lesson of kind of isolating the ego and saying that actually your ego is not the most important thing in every situation. But there's something about playing music with others that means you're at the same time passive and active.
Exactly. So it's a bit like this conversation, except instead of me listening to you and then responding, I would be responding while you're speaking. So we would be doing it at the same time, active and passive at the same time. You cannot play chamber music, especially not string quartet, if you're not, whilst you're playing maybe the most beautiful melody ever, if you're not also listening to what your colleagues are playing, you will not be able to play it right. This practically is a fact. And that means that, I guess we have to circle back to this idea of, what is a citoyen, a citizen. This French term came to me because it's also very much in this idea of this citoyen in the French way of thinking about it, is the person that in this context of the Republic is at the same time, of course, not all the time active, but is always also actively taking part in the ideal world, in the decision making of the collective that is in this society, but also of course has a passive role, of course, in receiving and living with certain conditions. So that's something that is very close in this status.
And on this collective aspect, as a singer, I've done a lot of choir singing, so I've sang with the other fellow singers. And we've been often told, even though we have our own voices, our own vocal colors, but we were asked to produce one same sound. And I've always found this very, very powerful, because even though there might be 25 people singing together the same thing, but they need to produce one unique sound. I feel this is also part of a musical collective experience of being together, being there as an individual, but producing a final product that is one.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit, because you grew up, your teenage years were spent in Palestine, and singing for you was kind of form of expression, but also a palliative. Why do you think it's music more than anything else that people often turn to in their darkest moments?
Yeah, so I started learning singing when I was a teenager in Palestine. Obviously growing up there was not always easy. Even for me, being a witness of what was happening there, the daily violence and everything. So that's one of the reasons why I started, learning music and specifically singing. I was told I had a voice, so that's why I chose also to sing. To me, it was freeing. I remember going to my lessons after school. So as I presented yesterday during the Coda Live, my singing teacher would live just in front of the separation wall between Ramallah and Jerusalem. So I would walk there every week. I would pass by the wall. you know, carrying a kind of burden also. And I remember getting out of her studio after singing for an hour with her and being completely freed. So that's why I see music as a medicine, as something that, because music is vibration also. So you let the vibrations, you know, gain your body, and vibrations are healing. You know, when you produce certain frequencies, this has been also proved by science, that a certain kind of frequencies can also have a very positive impact on the bodies, on the molecules.
And how can it be resistance, if at all? Do you think music can be a kind of form of resistance?
I absolutely do. Yeah, and history has showed actually that music has been used as a tool for resistance. There are plenty of examples throughout history. Could it be the spiritual music during slavery? But also a recent example, you know, for example, in Algeria, during the Hirak uprising in 2019, well, people wouldn't be able to gather publicly in public spaces, and the only places they'd be able to be together were the stadiums to watch a football game or sports. And this is where actually the uprising started. They gathered, they were there for the game, for the sport, but also through this moment they sang together, they chanted songs that they couldn't have, you know, sung in demonstrations or protests or even in public spaces. And so, you know, everything started through music, which is very, very powerful. And I mean, I've got plenty of other examples of, you know, music as a form of resistance. There's this very, very famous Egyptian musician and songwriter who is called Sheikh Imam, who spent several years in prison because he was criticizing the Sadat and Nasser regimes. And until today, Sheikh Imam is a very important figure throughout the Arab world, and his songs are sung in Palestine, in Tunisia, in Algeria as a form of resistance. South America also has a lot of examples, so could go on for long.
Yeah, and I guess I can come to this example that we spoke about. This for me very, very powerful, very strong example. Ahmed Abu Amsha in Gaza is a musician, a music teacher who teaches displaced children in the tents in Gaza. He himself, of course, 10 times displaced, 12 times displaced, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how many times. So he's also living under these conditions of genocide, just like the children are. And last year, at some point, he was giving a music lesson to the kids. And the sound of the drones was just stronger than ever. So the sound of the drones for Palestinians in Gaza is the sound of death, is the sound of you know, horror, is this just the sound of absolute devastation. And the kids were telling him, listen, you know, this is so loud, we cannot hear ourselves singing. We don't hear ourselves singing. We have to stop. We can't do this. And he said to them, well, I mean, before we stop, you know, why don't we try to use the sound of the drone as a note and sing on top of this note, right? So they you know, the drone was buzzing, and they kind of tried this for a couple of minutes, 10, 15 minutes. After that, he said to them, well, you know, if you want, we can make a short video, you know, with the result. If you like, the kids, yay, okay. So then they made this video, he posted it, I think he went to sleep or something. The next morning, 1 million views. This is the kind of the birth of the now famous drone song, which to me also exemplifies, it's not just resistance. Of course, it's also a form of resistance, but it's also what is famously the Palestinian sumud, steadfastness. We are staying here. We are not even letting this, it's not that we're not going away, it's that we are staying here, and we're going to even make art with the sound of death that is above us. I think it's a very powerful message. Should I take the violin? We will show you what this sounds like. No, I'm not gonna play much. I'm just going to play. I am going to be the drone. So I'm just going to play one note. She's the singer. She will sing for you this melody while I unpack the instrument. 1 second.
I'll add the connection. Do you want to look it up?
Say something about this.
I'm looking for the lyric. Should I look at it? You sound like...
All right.
You have to have the Arabic...
1 second. Why you the mic for this out? The sound of the drone.
Can you sing it without the lyrics? Sing like...
I'm sorry, I can't find the lyrics, but I'll improvise. Wait, it's a shame though. Could you...
I will just keep playing.
Where? Could you share the interlude? Sure. Sven.
So now you get to experience the heavy sound of lyrics.
To improvise, just okay.
شيل عالجمل شيل يا حوي طلع دم الشهيد طب الهيل يا ليلو ويل ويل عالجمل ويل ويلو بطلع يا صبات نجوم الليل لا لا ويلو شيل شيل يا جمل شيل يا حوي طلع دم الشهيد يا ليلو ويل Sorry. So this is like you've got to imagine the scene of this music teacher. He's a oud player, and so he gathered his students, and there were like dozens of children singing this song. You know, taking the tonality, as Michael did, of the drone, and using it as a tool for kind of very special musical experience.
Yeah. Talking about music in the context of Palestine and Israel, we've arrived to talking about the West Eastern Divan Orchestra. So this is an orchestra that was co-founded by your father, Daniel Barenboim, and the late academic writer and activist Edward Said. And for those of you who don't know, this is an orchestra that invites musicians from across the Middle East, very much including Israelis and Palestinians, to come together and play together in an orchestra. It was founded in 1999, which is a long time ago now, and the world is a different place since then. What was the idea and the hope behind that orchestra?
So I mean, the idea, the way it was kind of invented by Edward Said and my father, was actually just simply what you said, is that we will, you know, the idea was not first to create an orchestra. Actually, it was just supposed to be a workshop, but then there were so many applications that it just needed to be big enough, so it became an orchestra. And yes, the idea is that the musicians would come together in this space, rehearse together, play together, also, you know, have controversial discussions with each other, and this is basically the idea behind the project. It's really that simple.
No.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful and noble idea as a concept, and then, you know, nearly 30 years later, we've witnessed the unfolding horrors of the genocide in Gaza. And it's easy to look at a project like this and think it's such a beautiful idea, but is it completely pointless?
Well, the question, I think, is not whether it's pointless or pointful. No, whether it's pointless or not. The question, I think, is whether we have to rethink and reframe these kind of concepts. So the 90s was a very different time. And even though Edward Said was a very strong critic of the Oslo process, he called it the Palestinian Versailles. We shouldn't forget that. It was still, the 90s was still a time where there was also much more hope and much more optimism that that there would be some kind of, you know, path forward. Now, in the context of genocide to Palestinians in Gaza, in the context of annexations, of ethnic cleansing, we have to, I think, also rethink the way a term like coexistence is used. Edward Said uses the term coexistence a lot, but Edward Said uses the term coexistence in a very specific meaning, namely that there is mutual recognition. So recognition of the Nakba and recognition of the Holocaust as these kind of founding events, to put it very simply. Coexistence now is used in a very narrow sense of existing next to each other. And this cannot be the way that we imagine any of this. We have to instead, I think, imagine and use a term like co-resistance, where we come together to resist fascism, genocide, apartheid, all of these, you know, all of these forms of systematic violence against groups. And only through a practice of co-resistance can we you know, come away from this problem that we are basically, how should I say this? We are diverting attention from problem solving into a kind of, well, we'll just, you know, put them in a room and, you know, it's a bit like pouring oil and water into a glass and just looking and hoping that it will mix. Of course, we know it will not. So what do we do? And this is where the idea and the term co-resistance is so important. And this is a practice that I think we have to learn to do on a daily basis if we want accountability, which accountability and justice are the only basis with which we can imagine a future.
Yeah. So I personally think that it's a good thing that this orchestra continues, but I do, at the back of my mind, I am thinking what it might lead to, if anything. Am I asking too much from music to step in where politics fails?
Do you want to answer this? Or
me. I mean, I think we have to be practical with certain things. When I say accountability, justice, I mean that because there is a problem and there is a cause for a problem or several causes. Just by playing beautiful music, I think that it's of course it has a place. It's very important, but if you don't tackle the causes of the problem will not go away. It's very simple. So we as musicians, it's a question of practicing this co-resistance. We as musicians have a role to play. If we want things to change, we have a very active role to play as artists in society, especially in societies of governments that are complicit in this genocide, because this is an international genocide. This is not just one state. And this means that we have to assume our responsibilities in our societies and take an active part in resisting. But having said that, of course, me playing Bach is not going to change anything.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, music is one of the very numerous aspects of life, and that when, you know, you are addressing a situation like the situation in Gaza, the genocide, you know, there are calls for boycott, economic, financial, boycotting the universities, scholar boycott, and I think it should also be cultural, you know, as culture and art and music being also representatives of a state. And we've also discussed this with Michael, but art is never neutral, and it can be, because it's, you know, anchored in this reality, in this world, and musicians are not aside of this reality. Well, sometimes they produce sounds that we wonder from where they come, you know, but as people, as beings, there is a responsibility.
Yeah, thank you. Questions? Any questions from anybody? Is there a hand at the back? Back over there.
thank you, Aïda, Nadia, and Michael. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Oh, brilliant. it's very illuminating to hear what you're saying, and it's very inspiring. As a musician myself, I often look for purpose with music, and I often hope that music can play an important role in our world. And like many others, seeing horrors unfold before your very eyes, you often wonder, what can you do as a musician? What can we do as musicians to make a difference? I think it's a natural instinct for musicians, because we see the power of music bring people together all the time. We see it in concert halls and stadiums, whether it's classical or pop. Music brings people together. So, in terms of specific practicalities about how music can actually make a real difference in very volatile situations like this, can you share any light or suggestions and ideas how we can apply music in a very practical sense to fix very practical problems? Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I as a practical person myself, of course, I asked myself this very question, one solution that I came up with colleagues together is to create an artist collective called Make Freedom Ring, that organizes charity concerts for Palestine. So the idea, of course, on a very basic level, is we want to raise funds for very important work being done in Gaza and in the West Bank. But the idea is also, we want the music as resistance. We are creating a format where the people that sit with us in the room are all come together also for this cause. So it's not just that they want to, give five euros to an organization and then otherwise not do anything. But they ask for this, they want this. And the third thing, which is very important, is we platform Palestinian artists, so Palestinian musicians, but also Palestinian speakers, so that we always have the question of Palestine at the forefront of the work that we do. And that's, I think, very important, because we have to come away from this idea that we can, speak about Palestine constantly, but never involve Palestinians into our conversations and into our art. So this, practically speaking, if you can find a few colleagues and organize an event, choose your favorite organization and fundraise for them, and use this fundraising event to do this work where you put forward this question and platform these artists if you can.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, I mean, Michael and I are classically trained musicians, but also as we are very much involved on Palestine, I think it's important also to give some space to the Palestinian culture that is being erased. And, and so part of it is also, making this whole cultural memory, this very memory, to keep it alive. So what I also do when I can, and usually when I speak as a journalist, I usually end with a Palestinian song, and this is actually the thing that moves people the most, hearing music instead of words. And this is where I really understood the power of music over words. So, featuring Palestinian music, culture, Palestinian artists, of course, I think it's a very important part of the task also. Yeah, and I think it's too much to ask from art to save anything. I don't believe in the idea that art will save the world. I mean, but art has definitely a role to play, and I would say that another role that it has is once again a healing role. We were talking about that also this morning. It feels very lonely to be a witness of the daily horrors and massacres that are being committed in Gaza, for instance. And, we're all witnessing this through our screens in a very solitary way. So gathering through music is also a way to heal collectively and to share the pain in a collective way. And I think this is also what music is for. Yeah.
Any more questions? There's one over there.
Oh yes.
Thanks very much for this interesting panel. I was wondering, we see in music, just as in politics and in journalism, that we're increasingly also acting in our own echo chambers, and so we have, you know, the algorithms are feeding us the music that we already like, and we're not exposed really to different kinds. And I'm interested in hearing what you would recommend, or how you in your daily lives and practice counter that, and what we can do to be exposed to different kinds of music. Thanks.
I'm not sure I understood the question. It's concerning AI?
Well, no, not so much. Well, I guess the algorithm, say we're on Spotify or using Apple Music, it targets us with the same thing we already listen to, right? So we stay, unlike when we used to listen to more, say, radio, and it was a broader, you know, maybe somewhat broader, sort of range of music. We're now in this sort of echo chamber of, I like this music and that's all I also ever get. And how can we counter that?
Well, I think that, you know, this can be applied to any aspect and to many aspects of life, journalism, for instance. And we've seen that in the past years there has been an increasing how to call it, not suspicion, but anger and towards the mass media, and so people have, you know, put their attention, when you want to get real information, towards, they've directed the attention through towards independent media, independent production, and I think this also applies to music. You know, platforms that are not under any kind of you know, pressure, influence. So I would say that the keyword here is independent production. I don't know what Michael thinks, or Nadia.
I saw more hands, but I think we'll just continue this conversation outside, because we don't have much time left. Okay, I think we have one quick question, because...
Thank you very much. I'm going to be very quick.
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks for this very interesting thoughts. I had a question when hearing you, like, how do you use music to free Palestinians from the Nazis of Hamas? That would be very interesting. Thanks a lot.
Sorry, can you say the question again?
How do you use music to free Palestinians from the Nazis of Hamas?
Yes, yeah.
Toilette. Much.
Victims.
Oui.
We're having troubles understanding what you... I don't understand this question. I really don't.
I guess the question is very clear. You were like discussing about how you're using music and many thoughts to support and help the Palestinians. I have a concrete question. How you use music to free Palestinians from the domination of the Hamas?
How you use music...
That's a very concrete question.
How you use music to free Palestinians from the domination of Hamas?
But I mean, first of all, I would like to urge us to look at Palestinians as a whole. So not just the Palestinians in Gaza, but also the Palestinians in the West Bank, also the Palestinians in what is now Israel, also the Palestinian refugees. They're not all under Hamas rule, and they're all not free. So I don't really understand what I can say more about this, to be honest.
We're running out of time, and we heard yesterday from you, Aïda, very beautifully singing, and I wanted to ask you, Michael, if you would like to play something.
I will try. I'm not warmed up, but I will try.
Okay. It's good.
Let's leave it over. So let's say what I think.
Sorry, I will play the second movement of the third partita by Johann Sebastian Bach.
Thank you. Okay. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you, Aïda.